Hello everyone, this week's video is quite a special one. Not only is it going to be my biggest project to date in this ½ metre tank, but I also have a very cool inhabitant for it, although I'm sure you already know what it is from the title and thumbnail. They're my dream ant colony, Polyrhacus dives, although they're better known as false weavers for the awesome nests that they make. I don't want to delay it any longer, but before I can begin with the build, I need to prepare and install the hardware, so let's get to work. I moved the tank into place, which measures 30 cm by 30 cm by 50 cm, which equates to around 45 litres. I'll also be keeping it on a neoprene mat to evenly distribute its weight. Starting off, I decided to apply a frosted background as I don't really want the wall behind to distract from the ants. I turned the tank on its side and sprayed lots of soapy water on. All the water was squeezed out and the edges were trimmed with a razor blade. As these ants from the tropics, they'll need a bit more heat. To provide this, I'm using a large heat mat. I placed it under the tank onto the mat, which I pre-cut a slit in to fit the connector. Now, to really make this feel a bit more professional and to not have loose wires everywhere, I'll be mounting a 4-way plug extender onto the stand. As is necessary for all heat sources, I'll be using a thermostat. It can handle up to 100 watts of heat sources, so if I find the ants need it in the future, I can add an overhead ceramic heater. With it, I'm also using a 3D part that I designed myself and printed. It fits the thermostat perfectly and makes it look just a little bit cleaner. As this is a special project for me, I had to get a proper light. I'm using an all-pond solutions light, which is a really good light when on a budget. As always, I'll link everything I used in the description. With all the hardware in and my back now aching, I can finally move on to the inside of the tank. But whilst I'm working on the build, I'll remove the light for ease of access. As always, I started off with the drainage layer. I'll be using white gravel, which I rinsed thoroughly before adding. Whilst I was planning this, I was stuck between a darker or white layer. In the end, I decided to go with this colour, as I think it should really help it stand out, as this will be a bit of a feature piece in my room. Coincidentally, it also goes well with some plants that I'm planning on adding. I moved on to separating this layer from the substrate. Like usual, I'm using geotextile fabric. I cut it down to shape and trimmed it until it fit nicely. It was then added in. With this all done, I could add the substrate. This is a slightly adapted version of my usual mix. There's more cocoa husk mixed in, and the substrate as a whole should provide plenty of materials that the ants can incorporate into their webs. Now, unlike most ants, these ants don't dig, and as I just mentioned, they weave their nests. So to meet their needs, I'm keeping the soil level fairly shallow. I'm not thinking about how it looks just yet. I'll wait until the hardscape is in for that. Now that the substrate has all been added, we can move on to something a bit more exciting, the hardscape. As these are weaver ants, I want to stick mainly to wood to give them as much room as possible to weave. I've got a lot of spider wood, although most of it's probably too large, so I'll see what works as we go along. With this build in particular, I want to try and create a scape that looks fantastic from nearly any direction. Of course, I want it to look good from the front, but I also want it to be pleasing when I look at it from my desk or when I'm in bed so I can observe the colony late at night. As you saw, I tried a few different pieces on the left side before I settled on something that looked a bit like a tree trunk. There's plenty of nooks and crannies that will be perfect for the ants to begin their nest in. Then I began experimenting with the second piece. I want this side to be slightly lower, but leave a nice area to the right when observed from my bed. This stage took quite a while, and no matter how many pieces I tried, nothing seemed to quite fit my vision. Instead, I went off and cut one of the large pieces in half, and was left with this piece here. It has great direction that matches the other piece, also leaves plenty of room for the ants, and looks great from any direction. I then spent a while making sure all the pieces were secure by building up the soil around the bases. I also built the soil up towards the back, adjusting the topology of the ground until I had something that I was pleased with. Well, the majority of the hardscape is complete, although there's a few small tweaks I still want to make. I'm really happy with the flow of the wood, and there's plenty of hiding spots for the ants, where they can also nest. It looks great from all three directions, and it'll only get better with plants. The main thing I want to do is add a few twigs in various places. These will help fill the void under the wood on the left. I attached a piece across the top, linking the two pieces to provide a bridge that the ants will hopefully travel across. I then began to secure them with cyanoacrylate superglue, which is completely animal safe when cured. I also covered it and the surrounding areas in dry moss to add cover for the ants and to break up the large pieces of wood. I'll add more, however I'll wait until the planting for that. Well, that's everything I'm going to be doing in this video, so stay tuned for part 2 next week. In that video I'll be planting and adding the ants, so let me know if there's anything you'd like to see. Also, whilst I was preparing everything for this build, I managed to catch a video on my phone of the ants weaving in their temporary setup. The wiggly white thing is a larva who's being held by a worker, which is encouraging it to spin a web. This behaviour is so cool and I can't wait to see it in their proper terrarium, so consider subscribing and I'll hopefully see you all next week in part 2.